Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign. If you haven't already done so, please make sure the volume of this podcast is set perfectly to your listening enjoyment. Please take your seat, whether that's on the treadmill, car, sofa, or bed, and buckle in for the last trip. My name is Jamie Beebe, and I'll be your tour guide, recreating someone's last days in paradise. On behalf of myself and everyone behind the scenes, please enjoy the Last Trip podcast. And because nobody likes a long flight to get to where they want to be, let's prepare for takeoff. Nancy Ng was a smart, outgoing, beautiful 29-year-old from California who loved yoga. But when she went to Guatemala for a yoga retreat in October of 2023, she never came home. Her devastated family only wants to know what happened, but the witnesses aren't talking, and things aren't adding up. They've been fighting for almost a year now to not only find Nancy and bring her home, but also find out exactly what happened the day she disappeared. Last week, I covered the disappearance of Taylor Casey from a yoga retreat in the Bahamas, and I was surprised to learn just how many people go missing or end up dead while attending a yoga retreat. So, I wanted to tell you about Nancy's case too. While Nancy's case is much different, it makes me wonder why a yoga retreat might not be the safest place to go. Guatemala is actually one of my favorite countries to visit, but it was never on my top list of locations. I ended up going a couple years ago because flights were on sale, so I figured why not? And I was absolutely blown away. I'd heard a lot about the crime and civil unrest, but also knew that in the past couple decades, the country changed quite a bit. I spent time in Antigua and then climbed Acatenango volcano and camped out on top, and it was a life-changing experience. I joined a guided group, which happened to be mostly other solo female travelers from all over the world. It was a long and difficult hike up to the top. If you get the chance to go, I highly recommend hiring someone to carry your backpack. It costs around $10 and is totally worth it. And by the time we got to the top, we had all become fast friends, discussing everything from careers to boys to our childhoods and home countries. The top was freezing cold, and we were camping out for the night. But looking around once we were up there was one of the most beautiful scenes I have ever witnessed. Fuego volcano was erupting right next to us every 15 minutes or so, shooting lava and smoke into the sky. As a group, we stayed up all night, partly because it was too cold to sleep, and partly because we didn't want to miss the view. It's one of my favorite travel adventures. I stayed in Antigua, which is an amazing little town. There were photo ops on every street, it's rich with history, I felt safe the entire time, and it was totally affordable. It's a beautifully preserved colonial city surrounded by volcanoes, with cobblestone streets and colorful buildings, churches, and convents. There's also the Tikal National Park, which is one of the most famous and largest Mayan archaeological sites and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. They have impressive temples, pyramids, and plazas surrounded by dense rainforest teeming with wildlife like monkeys, toucans, and jaguars. Also, Simuk Champe, a series of turquoise limestone pools located in the dense jungles of Alta Verapaz. It's one of Guatemala's most breathtaking natural attractions. There's swimming, cave tours, and stunning views from lookout points. Guatemala is a great place to visit, whether it's for a relaxing vacation, backpacking, going with family, solo, or a romantic couple's getaway. The retreat Nancy attended took place at Lake Atitlán in Guatemala, and I've spent some time there. It's a gorgeous, massive lake and one of Guatemala's most celebrated national treasures, situated in the southwestern highlands of the country. It's nestled in a volcanic basin approximately 5,125 feet above sea level. And it's one of Central America's deepest and largest lakes, covering about 50 square miles. This lake is absolutely enormous and definitely a sight to see. It's surrounded by three huge volcanoes: Volcan San Pedro to the northwest, Volcan Atitlán to the southeast, and Volcan Toliman to the northwest. Even though the lake was gorgeous, everyone I talked to said not to get in it because the water was heavily polluted, very cold, and even the locals mostly stayed out of the water. There are plenty of boats, paddleboards, and kayaks, but very rarely any swimmers. There are a few common superstitions and legends surrounding the lake as well. The legend of Zocamil, or the spiraling winds, is a strong wind that occurs in the afternoon on Lake Atitlán. According to superstition, it is said to be the result of the spirits of the ancestors stirring the waters. Some believe that these spirits create the wind as a form of cleansing or punishment, particularly if someone has disrespected the lake. Because of this, locals warn that travelers and fishermen should avoid being on the lake in the afternoon when the winds are the most dangerous. Some locals believe that Lake Atitlán is home to a giant serpent that guards the lake. The serpent is said to reside deep within the waters, only appearing when someone has disrespected the lake or disturbed its sacred energy. Fishermen and divers have reported strange phenomena in the depths of the lake, and it's said that anyone who ventures too deep might never return. The superstition serves as a warning to those who might underestimate the lake's power or its hidden dangers. There are also numerous tales of people and boats mysteriously disappearing on the lake. Some believe these disappearances are caused by angry lake spirits, or that the lake has hidden vortexes that pull people down into its depths. Locals caution against being on the lake during certain times, particularly when the weather seems unusually calm or eerie, as this is believed to be a sign that the spirits are restless. The shores are home to several indigenous Mayan communities, each with its own distinct language, traditions, and crafts. Panajachel is considered the gateway to Lake Atitlán and is a busy town with lots of hotels, restaurants, and markets. I wasn't too impressed with the town. It's definitely a gateway to the lake, but not a town I'd stay in for a visit. San Pedro La Laguna is a little town popular among backpackers with a vibrant nightlife, but not necessarily the safest area. I wouldn't go alone, and I definitely wouldn't go out at night alone there. San Marcos La Laguna and Santa Cruz La Laguna are known for all the wellness retreats, yoga centers, and calm environment. There are several other small indigenous towns, but most aren't places tourists are going to stay. If you're going from town to town, the safest way is by boat. Even the locals rarely drive. It's common for cars and buses to be held up and robbed along the roads. Also, landslides are a common danger during the rainy season. The lake has become a major hub for wellness and yoga retreats, attracting people from around the world seeking spiritual growth, relaxation, and rejuvenation in a stunning natural setting. The lake is surrounded by towering volcanoes, lush forests, and tranquil waters, creating a calm and inspiring environment for meditation and yoga practice. Many visitors and retreat organizers believe that Lake Atitlán has a unique spiritual energy. The combination of indigenous Mayan culture, the dramatic natural landscape, and the peaceful atmosphere fosters deep personal reflection. Compared to retreats in North America or Europe, the yoga retreats at Lake Atitlán are often more affordable, making it accessible to a wide range of people. And there are all different types of retreats. There are the holistic and multimodality retreats, including yoga, meditation, breathwork, sound healing, and shamanic practices, which often incorporate elements of local Mayan spiritual traditions. There are places that offer yoga teacher training programs that typically span several weeks and are usually accredited by Yoga Alliance and offer an immersive learning experience. There are silent retreats that focus on meditative silence combined with yoga, detox, and cleansing retreats. Themed retreats, like women's retreats aimed at empowerment and self-care, or healing from trauma using yoga, meditation, and therapeutic workshops to address emotional and physical trauma, are also abundant at Lake Atitlán. In the August before the October 2023 yoga retreat that Nancy attended, Yogi Eddie, or Eddie Ramada, wrote this on his Instagram. "Hi yogis, wanted to share that my upcoming Be the Change retreat at Lake Atitlán, Guatemala, may be my last time back, as I'm ready to explore new places with my students. I first discovered this magical place surrounded by 3 volcanoes back in 2021 as a student myself. This October will be my 5th time back. It's a very special, high-vibrating place. And any other information about Eddie's yoga retreat has been taken down. But most retreats are pretty similar. Most start with a morning practice like sunrise yoga, often practiced outdoors with views of the lake and volcanoes, usually followed by meditation or breathwork. During the day, participants engage in workshops that focus on various aspects of yoga, meditation, and personal development. Some retreats offer healing sessions, including massage, Reiki, and acupuncture. Many retreats schedule free time during the day for reflection, journaling, or exploring the nearby villages. The day often concludes with gentle yoga or restorative class, followed by meditation, sound healing, or a group discussion. Most retreats provide vegetarian or vegan meals, focusing on locally sourced organic ingredients. Fresh fruits, vegetables, and superfoods are often a staple of the diet, along with herbal teas and detoxifying drinks. Retreats range from weekend getaways to month-long immersions. The most common ones last 5 to 10 days, providing a balance of deep practice and relaxation. The price varies depending on the center and type of retreat. Basic retreats may start around $500 to $700 for a week, while more luxurious or specialized retreats like teacher training can cost upwards of $1,500 to $3,000 or even more. While all this sounds absolutely amazing, and yoga is great exercise for your mind and body, there is a negative side. There is limited medical access in this area of Guatemala. Many retreat centers are in remote areas, so if you have any health conditions or emergencies, it might take significant time to reach a hospital or clinic. There are also some clashes with yoga culture and indigenous culture. Some retreats incorporate aspects of Mayan culture, spirituality, or indigenous practices. But there's an ongoing debate about whether these are done with the appropriate respect and understanding. There have been some concerns about retreats modifying or appropriating local traditions without proper acknowledgement or involvement of indigenous communities. Along those lines is the over-tourism and environmental strain these types of retreats have on an area. Some villages, especially San Marcos La Laguna, has seen an influx of foreigners, which can drive up the cost of living for locals, alter community dynamics, and increase strain on local infrastructure. While many retreats promote eco-consciousness, the increasing number of tourists can contribute to pollution, waste, and overuse of natural resources. And the lake itself has faced pollution challenges, partly due to inadequate waste management systems and untreated sewage from both local communities and tourism facilities. There's also limited regulation over yoga retreats in Guatemala, and not all centers maintain high standards. This means there are poorly organized retreats, inexperienced teachers, or programs that fail to meet expectations. In Nancy's situation, Yogi Eddie had no idea what to do in the face of an emergency and did not have enough knowledge and responsibility to run a retreat. Many people don't think about challenging group dynamics. Group retreats can sometimes lead to personality clashes or discomfort with group activities. If the retreat does not manage group interactions well, it can detract from the overall experience, and many retreats in the area offer alternative therapies, like shamanic rituals, plant medicine, like ayahuasca or cacao ceremonies, or detox programs that involve fasting or herbal treatments. These are not always well-regulated or scientifically validated, and there can be major health risks and even death if not done correctly and supervised by professionals. But Nancy had gone on this same exact retreat the year before with the same organizer and loved it. That's why she went back. Only this time, something went very wrong. Let's get to know Nancy Ng after a word from our sponsors. Nancy Ng was born on June 28, 1994. She's the oldest of four, with a younger sister, Nikki, and younger brothers, Jonathan and Richard. They were a tight-knit family, growing up in a two-bedroom apartment in Monterey Park, California, and they stayed close through adulthood. Nancy was a total extrovert. She was smart, spontaneous, always on the go, and had a very bubbly personality. She was always smiling and always talking. She could talk to anyone about anything and everything, and she usually did. She had a genuine interest and curiosity about people, and was the type who was always present and paid attention to whomever she was with. She made time for everyone and had a special way of making people open up to her. And at 29 years old, life was opening up for Nancy. She loved traveling, hiking, hanging out with her family, and cuddling her cat. She was notorious for always being late for everything, usually because she was deep in conversation with someone she just met. She was also very responsible and loved routine, which is probably why she loved yoga so much. She got into it about 4 years prior when her sister Nikki saw a free yoga trial and didn't want to go alone. Nikki ended up hating it, but Nancy loved it and took to it right away. She fell in love with the self-discipline of yoga and often did those 30-day challenges where she would attend an intense yoga class every day for 30 days straight. When she set her mind to something, she absolutely went for it 100% and didn't give up. After graduating from California State University with a law degree, she chose to work with special needs children and took a job as a behavioral interventionist aide at Garfield Elementary School in Alhambra, California. And she loved her job. She felt like it was fulfilling, and she was doing something good with her life. She loved all the kids, and they loved her right back. She often told her family stories about the kids she worked with at dinners, and always with a smile. Nancy had a busy lifestyle, working from about 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., then going to yoga after work, cooking a healthy dinner, catching up with friends, and preparing for work again the next day. The year before, Nancy attended her first yoga retreat in Guatemala. She told her family about how she'd wake up each morning and take some time to herself near Lake Atitlán just to take in the beauty. So when the opportunity came up to go back to the same retreat, she jumped at the chance. It would be the same yoga retreat, the same host, Eddie, that she met at her hot yoga class, the same itinerary, and the same place in Guatemala. The retreat was a much-needed break from her busy lifestyle, and she couldn't wait to go back. But unfortunately, this year would be much different from the year before, because Nancy mysteriously vanished right before the retreat ended. There are a lot of unanswered questions in this case, and witnesses who won't talk. Let's go over what we do know about the retreat, the witnesses, the incident, and what happened after. October 12th, 2023, was the last time her family saw Nancy. They all met up at a Chinese restaurant for a joint birthday celebration for her siblings Richard and Nikki. It was a fun party, and Nancy told them all how excited she was for her trip, because she was leaving just 2 days later on October 14th. When she arrived, she sent her family a group text, letting them know she made it to Guatemala and would be putting her phone in airplane mode. She told them all she would be safe and not to worry about her. And that was the last text she ever sent to anyone in her family. This year, the group was staying at Hotel Isla Verde. It's a popular eco-friendly boutique hotel located on the shores of Lake Atitlán, near the village of Santa Cruz La Laguna. The village is only accessible by boat. It has that off-the-beaten-path vibe and attracts travelers seeking relaxation, nature, and wellness. The hotel's location provides stunning panoramic views of the lake, especially at sunrise and sunset. It's the perfect place for a yoga retreat. The hotel was constructed using local materials like bamboo, wood, and stone, and incorporates energy-efficient systems, which gives it a rustic yet comfortable environment. They offer different room options, including family cabanas and private bungalows. Most rooms have private balconies or terraces that are perfect for viewing the lake and volcanoes. I'm not sure what kind of room Nancy had, but I'd guess it was a private bungalow. Isla Verde is well known for its wellness offerings, and the hotel also organizes kayaking, paddleboarding, hikes to explore the surrounding villages, mountains, and volcanoes, as well as coffee farms and cultural experiences. It is a remote location, which is part of the charm, but can be a challenge for some travelers, as well as emergency services, and there's limited Wi Fi and amenities. The Be the Change yoga retreat had 11 participants, plus the retreat organizer. They mostly all knew each other from Hot 8 Yoga in Los Angeles, where organizer Eddie Ramada worked as a yoga teacher. Hot 8 Yoga is a popular yoga studio chain throughout LA, known for its heated yoga classes that offer a blend of traditional yoga practices and modern fitness trends. It entails doing yoga in a heated room somewhere between 90 degrees and 108 degrees Fahrenheit to enhance flexibility, detoxification, and cardiovascular benefits. On the morning of October 19th, the group did morning yoga meditation from 6:45 to 8 a.m. Then they all ate breakfast and relaxed. At about 10:30 a.m., 10 participants took a short walk from the hotel to rent kayaks and paddleboards from Kayak Guatemala. The last video of Nancy that day was a happy one, with the group on the water in their kayaks and paddleboarders near the shore. She turns and waves to the camera. A couple hours later, 8 people returned to the dock, gave their kayaks and paddleboards back, and walked to the hotel to relax and get in the jacuzzi. Only 2 people from the group were left on the lake, Nancy Ng and Christina Blazek. Christina was also a member of Hot 8 Yoga in LA and worked as a defense lawyer in San Bernardino. The 2 girls had gotten to know each other in the previous days at the retreat, well enough to take several photos with their arms around each other. A short time later, someone pointed out that there were still 2 kayaks in the water. But when they looked closer, they saw there was only one person. When Eddie noticed that something didn't look right, he requested a hotel staffer use their boat to go out there and help the women back to shore. By the time they got on the water, Christina was already paddling back alone. She ended up paddling back to a different dock than they all started out at, one that was much further east, and told the people in the boat that Nancy had gone in the water and was missing. She was met at the dock by Eddie, who then ushered her quietly and quickly back to the hotel. No one told the owners of Kayak Guatemala that there had been an accident on the water, and no one paid for the kayaks. In fact, no one talked to the owners of the kayak company at all. None of the retreat members called the police or emergency services. Instead, hotel staffers notified the owners of the hotel, who in turn notified the authorities 4 hours later. This is also when Nancy's father received a call from someone at the retreat who said Nancy went missing in the water. But they failed to give any other details, saying they didn't see the incident, so they couldn't provide a first-hand account of what happened. And when he got that call, he was understandably confused. He called the rest of the family and they all met at Nikki's house. When Nikki heard what happened, she still didn't understand and called the number back. Eddie answered, still not giving many details. Instead, just saying they would learn more from the police report. He was sorry for their loss and asked where he could send Nancy's things. The hotel owners took Christina and another participant to the police station to give a statement. Christina said she gave a statement to the police, but that statement has never surfaced. And there are allegations of briberies, which I'll cover later on in this episode. After the authorities were notified, a Navy boat with about 4 to 5 men started searching the lake for Nancy, and they searched for 72 hours. The problem is that the lake is huge, and they could only determine the areas to search from speaking to the owners of the hotel who weren't even there. And this is because everyone from the retreat left the country less than 12 hours later. On October 20th at 6 a.m., the rest of the group left Guatemala. According to the original itinerary, some of the participants were scheduled to leave the hotel that day around 10 a.m., but later said they left early to avoid road closures. Two people who were scheduled to leave at a later date were Christina and Eddie. Christina was scheduled to leave on the 21st and Eddie on the 22nd. But rather than staying to help look for Nancy, even until their scheduled departure, they just left. The next morning, the owners of the kayak company called the hotel looking for the group because no one paid for the rentals. That's the first time they heard there was any type of accident on the lake. No one had even alerted the owners of the kayak company. They felt it was incredibly suspicious because no one yelled out, cried, or even mentioned that anything happened on the lake. There were later reports that Nancy wasn't reported missing until 24 hours. But that wasn't exactly the case. She was actually reported around 4 hours after allegedly going underwater. But it wasn't until 24 hours later that the prosecutor's office was notified about what happened and opened the missing persons case. The next day, Nikki called Eddie back, still trying to make sense of things and find out what was going on and where Nancy was. She had no idea the group had already left the country and was calling him to ask him to help with the search because searchers needed information on where to look. But Eddie didn't answer his phone. He told Nikki he was tired and was trying to get some sleep. She later heard from sources that he actually was not sleeping, but rather ignored the call. When they finally spoke, she found out the group had already left. She asked Eddie for any photos he took of Nancy that day and during the retreat. She needed them for the searchers to determine what Nancy was wearing, as well as to have any last photos or memories of her sister. But Eddie told her it was just too hard for him to look at the photos of Nancy quite yet. He would send them to her later. Nancy's family sprang into action. They hired a search and rescue company immediately to help the search. On October 21st, the first air search was performed. Chris Sharp, operator of Black Wolf helicopters, spearheaded the search. But without any witnesses or witness statements to narrow down the search area, it was almost an impossible task. The Ng family also learned from some of the participants that they weren't offered life jackets or given any safety instructions, while the rental company said life jackets were offered, but nobody took them. Just another of the many inconsistencies in this case. Helicopters searched both sides of the lake and ran search patterns based on where Nancy was staying, where she was last seen in the video, and the wind and lake currents over the last few days. A boat team went out and searched the surface around where they thought she last was on the water. They deployed a diving team that was able to reach a depth of 40 meters, although the area they thought she went missing was up to about 300 meters deep. But again, they had no way of knowing even the general area of where Nancy went in the water because not only did the witnesses leave, they were not talking. Chris Sharp said it best when he said, "I'll be quite blunt. A normal human being would stay and then go, I don't know where it was, but we went over there." Just that verbal response. But without anything, they had no choice other than to search the entirety of the lake, hoping for any clues. He said he couldn't even confirm she went in the water, that it could be a murder, but there's no way of knowing because no one would talk. The Ng family asked friends, family, and anyone in Guatemala to help with the search, and the locals showed up. They shared missing person flyers, patrolled the surrounding areas on land and near the coast of the lake, and even rented boats and kayaks to help in the search. October 22nd was the day Nancy was due back in the United States. But there was still not a clue to her whereabouts other than a phone call from Eddie saying she went missing in the lake and he was sorry for their loss. On October 23rd, the Navy stopped conducting boat searches around noon, as that was the 72-hour mark since the original police report. But that didn't stop the Ng family. They continued to hire private boat companies and divers to keep looking for Nancy. On October 24th, there were still no signs of Nancy, but they were not giving up. They finally received the police report, but when they looked, they saw that Christina's statement was not included, which was shocking because she was the only actual witness. She was with Nancy when she disappeared, and her statement was nowhere to be found. In fact, there was no official record of her going to the police station at all. And this is when rumors of an alleged bribe started surfacing. And that's entirely possible because bribes and corruption are common in Guatemala. It's said that anyone can be bribed. By October 25th, the Ng family still had not heard from Christina. They had given her time to herself because they heard she was traumatized, even though they were so obviously traumatized by losing Nancy and having no details about what happened. Even though her timely response could be the difference between life and death, she had still not reached out or responded to any of the searchers or the family. The Ng family sent her an email asking her to please help them find Nancy by telling them what happened or even where on the lake she was last seen, but they got no response. They later heard that during those few days, rather than being so traumatized that Christina needed to take time to herself, she allegedly attended yoga classes, telling another student she didn't owe anything to Nancy's family. She even got her hair done, allegedly telling her stylist everything that happened. But she absolutely refused to speak to or even acknowledge Nancy's family. Nikki also sent Eddie a text on the same day asking for help, but received no response from him either. 11 days after Nancy vanished, on October 30th, there were still no signs of her. Every passing day, the fear of never finding her got more and more real. They were searching relentlessly, but the search efforts were hampered by insufficient information. They had no perimeters of the location of where Nancy went into the water, and no details because the key witness, the only person who was with her at the time, would not come forward to provide a witness report. Nikki also texted Eddie again, asking to get on a Zoom to get any details at all from him about what happened, but he still did not respond. On October 31st, the Ng family again emailed Christina with no response. On November 2nd, Eddie finally called Nikki back, but only to accuse her and her family of perpetuating a false image of him in the media. The only thing is, they hadn't released any info to the media. On the advice of lawyers, no one had named the yoga retreat, Eddie, Christina, or any of the other participants. Eddie was only concerned about what her disappearance had done to him, that it was hard for him to make the calls, that it was hard for him to find photos of Nancy for the family, that he wouldn't share Christina's last name or contact info because she was still too traumatized. But Eddie was not too traumatized to return to work by this time. And when someone asked him how the retreat went, he allegedly said, "Great." What kind of person would say that? By November 9th, Nancy's family was questioning the story that she went for a swim and drowned. And honestly, I find it hard to believe as well. I've been kayaking many times, and it's almost impossible to get out of a kayak and back into a kayak in deep water. It's hard enough to do it in water that you can stand up in. Not only that, the water was deep, dark, and cold. I just don't think she decided to jump in for a swim. None of the participants they spoke with saw Nancy get out of her kayak and into the water. Christina still refused to speak to the family, the search and rescue teams, or even respond to them over email. Christina's silence was not only hindering search efforts, but made it unbearable and agonizing for Nancy's family. Finally, on November 13th, the helicopter operator, Chris Sharp, had enough and named Christina in a news release by his company. He did it to help the family and his search efforts. Her statement or any response from her would have narrowed down the search area, Or they could have at least put divers in the right area if she would have gone on the dive boat. They could have asked questions like, what were you doing at the time of the incident? What can you remember? That would have narrowed down a massive lake to an Olympic-sized swimming pool. The family tried multiple times to get a hold of her. Searchers reached out, and Guatemalan authorities told the family they were working to get that official statement, but they also had not been able to contact her. I think Chris Sharp was absolutely right in giving her name to the media, because the next day, on November 14th, Christina finally gave a statement through her attorney. Her attorney said she had already spoken to police in Guatemala and given a statement, but that they told her many people drowned in the lake. And even if that was the case, it's not an excuse to just minimally help with search efforts. Christina's attorney said, "My client has, from the very beginning, done everything she can to shed light on what happened and to cooperate and give whatever information she has. But there is no official record of Christina ever talking to the police before leaving Guatemala, although the hotel owners said they went with her to the police station. So, what happened to that statement she supposedly gave there?" The Guatemalan attorney hired by the Ng family alleged that a bribe occurred, which allowed Christina's statement to be omitted, thus preventing her from being detained. Christina's attorney told News Nation that the idea that his client would bribe anyone is nonsense, and that she left the country on a regularly scheduled flight, leaving the retreat early in the morning because of road closures due to civil unrest in Guatemala. To that, the Ng family still took the high road. They understand why Christina might have felt reluctant to talk to police in Central America, but still can't understand why she didn't share details as soon as she got home. The only statement Christina has ever given about what happened that day came from her lawyer. And according to that statement, this is her story. Christina kayaked to the middle of Lake Atitlán to see where it changes color due to depth. The water became rough and she started heading back to shore when she and Nancy happened upon each other. After chatting for a moment, Nancy told Christina she was going for a swim. Christina tried to tell Nancy not to swim because it was rough out there and there was a good current. According to Christina, her warrant went ignored. Nancy went into the water and in the process pushed her kayak away. Christina tried to retrieve the kayak. She kept one leg in her kayak and one leg in the other kayak and tried to get back to Nancy and even got close to her. And then apparently she lost the kayak and turned around to go back and get the kayak again. And when she turned back around, Nancy was gone. Her lawyer said she went for help, gave a full statement to Guatemalan police, and has spoken with the FBI. According to him, to say my client hasn't done all she can is not true. As to why she didn't respond to the Ng family's requests for information, he said Christina was traumatized by the experience and needed more time. He also addressed the email the Ng family sent on October 31st, saying they understand she's been through a traumatic experience, and if she doesn't come forward, they'll make her come forward, which is not exactly what they said. And her lawyer goes on to say, the family got a hold of misinformation and put it out there. My client has now become a 100% absolute victim. And guys, I have a lot of thoughts about this statement. First of all, why did she only give a statement the day after she was outed to the media? If things happened as Christina's lawyer said, I'm pretty sure she is completely traumatized. But finding Nancy is an emergency situation. By not giving a statement right away, she impeded search and rescue efforts. Isn't it just bare minimum human decency to at least tell search and rescue where you last saw a victim? And lastly, no, Christina is not the victim. Nancy is the victim. In a rebuttal to the statement by Christina's lawyer, Nancy's family said, this was the most information given to the family about where to look for Nancy. The detail about Christina kayaking to where the lake changes color due to the depth could have helped the team focus their initial search on the deepest part of the lake where the water is opaque. Given the urgent, time-sensitive nature of the search, we only wish we could have received such information sooner. As for Christina's account of the incident, we fully recognize the possibility that Nancy drowned, but we do not understand the inconsistencies between the direct statements provided by her lawyer and the varying second-hand accounts of her story we've heard from others. In December, Nancy's family went to Guatemala in hopes of getting some clarity on what happened and where to find her. It brought them some comfort to experience the beauties of the country that Nancy loved so much. But they were left with more questions than answers. They even spoke to the search teams, who said that in their 20-plus years of search and rescue, they have never encountered a witness that was not actively helping the search teams. Before they left, they performed an impromptu ceremony for Nancy on the lake. They read her family's letters, offered Nancy's favorite snacks and drinks to the lake, burned incense, and tossed roses into the water. But it only brought the tiniest bit of comfort. They were finally able to collect Nancy's belongings. They still don't know what exactly happened the day Nancy went missing. They don't know where she went into the water, how she disappeared, or if there could have been time to save her had the witnesses spoken up. And Christina is still refusing to speak with the family or any of the search teams to try to narrow down where Nancy might be. By January 2024, Nancy's family felt the response to Nancy's alleged drowning from some retreat participants had been odd, disconcerting, and difficult to grasp. They understand that poor choices can be made in a moment of crisis and panic. But in the days and months after this tragedy, not much has been done to rectify these actions. In February, Nancy's family detailed the inconsistencies and questions that remained. Christina's lawyer claims that Christina gave a full statement to the Guatemalan police. However, there is no evidence that statement exists. Neither the police station nor the prosecutor's office have any record of Christina's statement. According to the hotel owners, they accompanied Christina to the police station along with one other retreat participant. Multiple retreat participants have stated that Christina's statement was purposefully omitted. Allegedly, there were 2 individuals on the boat that found and retrieved Nancy's kayak. One person claimed the kayak was found upside down with the paddle missing. The other, who was on the same boat, claimed the kayak was found right side up with the paddle inside. The owners of Kayak Guatemala claimed they received Nancy's kayak and paddle, but the equipment was put back with the rest of the kayaks and paddles in the shop, as opposed to being properly inspected by authorities. The owners, Mr. and Mrs. Beale, have claimed on national television that they witnessed the route the group took on the lake and that the entire group declined life vests. However, it's stated in the prosecutor's report that Mr. Beale was out of the country at the time of Nancy's disappearance, and Mrs. Beale was inside her residence at the time of the incident. The participants that spoke out confirmed they were never offered life vests, that no life vests were visible at the shop, and no life vests were available on the kayaks or paddleboards. By April of 2024, the Guatemalan prosecutor had been ignoring the Ings for 3 months, and nothing was being done by authorities to find Nancy or get a statement from either Christina or Eddie. A request for an informal meeting with Christina's lawyer went unanswered. Nancy would have been 30 years old on June 28th, and her family had to celebrate that special day without her. This month, September 2024, Nancy's case finally gained the support of Guatemala's Ministry of Interior and Interpol, and they will have another upcoming search soon. They learned that if they find her, an autopsy can still be performed on her remains. I truly hope they find Nancy. There is a virtual hearing set for September 10th with Christina Blazek and Eddie Ramada. Eddie did not respond to the subpoena, and Christina's attorney said he'd check with her about whether or not she could attend the virtual hearing. The investigator, who was alleged to have taken the bribe for the redaction of Christina's statement, said that he was told Nancy fell from the kayak, which is a different story from the lawyer's statement of Christina's story, where she said Nancy purposefully went in for a swim. Eddie has never spoken publicly or even addressed the fact that Nancy went missing at his retreat. Hot 8 Yoga, where he worked at the time, sent this email out to employees, telling them to say the following about the incident. We are all shocked and saddened by the news of Nancy's disappearance. Our thoughts and prayers are with Nancy's family and loved ones at this time. Hot 8 Yoga was in no way affiliated with nor sponsored the retreat. As such, we are waiting on completion of any pending investigations and further information before taking any action related to the incident. Hot 8 Yoga does not comment on any one person's terms of employment. However, we want to assure you that we have taken steps to protect the safety of our community. We continue to pray for Nancy's safe return. Eddie Ramada is no longer employed at Hot 8 Yoga, but he is still teaching. Guys, that timeline is a lot to take in. There are a lot of theories and unanswered questions. If Christina and Eddie never step up to tell what they know, there's a chance we'll never find answers or Nancy. Authorities believe Nancy drowned while out on the lake, although her body has never been found. Her case is currently classified as missing and remains unsolved. While I agree that Nancy probably did accidentally drown in the lake, there is absolutely no proof. The theories on social media and Reddit go from mundane to outlandish. So I'm going to try to reel them in and go over a few theories that stuck with me. One question that came up quite a bit was whether Nancy was even in the water that day. She was absolutely in the kayak with the rest of the group. We have that on video. What we don't know is what happened after that video. Some theories center around human trafficking, although I think this is highly unlikely. The theory is that it was planned, and Christina and Eddie are behind the whole thing, with people citing that Eddie has been there before and Christina is a lawyer. So somehow they would have access to sell someone into human trafficking. That sounds pretty absurd to me, and I don't think there's any merit behind it. Another theory is that there was some kind of lover's triangle, and Christina had to get rid of Nancy in order to be with Eddie. But that theory doesn't work because, for one, Nancy was in a relationship. For another, Eddie and Christina are not together. Also, if there was something going on between the three of them, I think someone from the group would have seen something and spoken up. A theory that has a slight possibility for me is that drugs were involved. We know that Nancy did not do drugs, but that doesn't mean there weren't drugs given to her without her knowledge, or that others in the group weren't doing drugs. That could explain why Nancy got in the water, why they left the country so quickly, and why Christina waited so long to make a statement through her lawyer. A lot of these retreats use hallucinogenic drugs, often referred to as plant medicine, because they think it will help them relax or become one with nature or go deeper into meditation. But it can also be the cause of bad decisions. Like I said, I think Nancy drowned in the lake, and I think it was an accident. But I also think Christina and possibly Eddie could be held accountable for their actions during and after she went in the water. Eddie was in charge of the group and planned the kayaking excursion. Although they were all adults, he should have made sure they were all wearing or at least had life vests with them. He also should have done a head count when only 8 came back and kept an eye on the 2 that remained in the water. I don't think Nancy went for a swim. First of all, she had been on a kayak before, and she would know how difficult, if not impossible, it is to get in and out of a kayak in deep water. Second, the water was cold, deep, and dirty. I just can't see her wanting to jump in and go for a swim. And third, if Nancy had gotten in the water on her own accord, she's a good swimmer, so I can't see her going under in mere seconds. There are no predatory animals in the lake, so she wasn't taken under that way. There are reports that the water was rough and there was a strong current. So if she wanted to swim, the possibility that it was more than she could handle is definitely there. I think it's interesting that Christina said through her lawyer that she told Nancy not to get in the water. It puts her in a position to be in the right with Nancy in the wrong, blaming Nancy for getting in the water after Christina told her not to. I wonder if that became the story after 4 weeks of her going through it in her head, wishing she had done something to try to save Nancy. The original officer said that Christina told him Nancy fell in the water. So I want to step into that scenario. I think either the water was rough and Nancy fell, or perhaps the women were joking around on the kayaks and she fell. Maybe they bumped into each other, causing Nancy to fall in the water. Any number of things could have caused Nancy to go in the water accidentally. I think when that happened, Christina panicked and wasn't able to help her. She was ashamed, scared, traumatized, which is a catalyst for all the questionable decisions she made after. I think she was worried about people judging her or blaming her, so her instinct after the incident was to run. By the time she got home, she felt ashamed. She refused to speak about it. When she was named publicly, she told her lawyer a story where she wasn't at fault. She told Nancy not to get in the water. Nancy did it anyway, putting the fault on Nancy. As for Eddie, I think he was worried about getting in trouble, especially in a foreign country, and worried about his reputation and livelihood. He made a lot of irresponsible mistakes. He didn't have Nancy's emergency contact info. He didn't make sure the participants were wearing life jackets. And he didn't call the police or an ambulance right when it happened. It's likely he had no type of emergency training, as someone who is running a retreat should. So his instinct was also to run in the situation. After returning to the United States, he was worried about talking because people would find out he made all these mistakes. And he didn't want to take any responsibility. And guys, this is just my personal theory. I think the truth is somewhere along these lines. I think a lot of mistakes were made, and both Christina and Eddie are trying to shield themselves from any blame, responsibility, or judgment. They want to stay quiet and hope it all goes away. I think it was a tragic accident with witnesses who are uncooperative and in self-preservation mode. I think they lack the response reactions that most human beings would have, and that is to help out in any way they could. But being a shitty person does not mean you're a murderer. I truly hope that Christina and Eddie and anyone else that was there or knows anything at all decides to come forward and talk to the authorities and Nancy's family. Even if it sounds like a small detail, it could at least help find Nancy. Let's do everything we can to bring Nancy home to the family that loves and misses her. Should you visit Guatemala? Let's chat about that after a message from our sponsors. According to the United States Travel Advisory, Guatemala is at a level 3, reconsider travel due to crime. That's violent crimes such as extortion, murder, armed robbery, carjacking, narcotics trafficking, and gang activity, which are common in Guatemala. Local police may lack resources to respond effectively to criminal incidents, resulting in low arrest and conviction rates. They also advise that when traveling to Lake Atitlán, to use certified tourist providers and only travel between villages on the lake shore by chartered boat, because the paths and roadways pose a serious crime risk. Hiking in the area, while popular, is best undertaken with the assistance of a local guide to ensure safety, as criminals are known to target some routes. I felt really safe while I was in Guatemala. I spent a lot of time in Antigua and some time in Lake Atitlán as well. Antigua felt a little safer than the areas around the lake, and the guides had a lot of warnings about the lake itself and certain villages. But overall, it was a great place to visit as a solo female traveler, and I highly recommend it. Let's cover some common tourist mistakes people make when visiting Guatemala. Never photograph locals without asking permission first. There's an old belief that having your photo taken without your consent means that the photographer is taking your soul, and superstitions are taken very seriously. There are also rumors in Mayan communities that foreigners intend to steal their children and sell them abroad. That makes them pretty wary of tourists, especially the ones taking photos. A good rule of thumb is don't travel at night. There is such a high crime rate that most locals don't travel at night, so unaware tourists are a prime target for criminals. Police say most crimes are committed between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. Bring cash. There are plenty of ATMs there, but most are old and outdated. If your card is a new one with a chip, the machine will not be able to read it. Also, a lot of criminals install scanning devices in public ATMs, and you don't want your vacation ruined with an empty bank account. Spanish is the dominant language in Guatemala, but don't assume everyone speaks Spanish or English. Guatemala recognizes 21 Mayan languages and dialects. Wear bug spray. Beyond the irritation of mosquito bites, they carry viruses like dengue and malaria. Don't flush toilet paper down the toilet. There are trash bins in every bathroom. The plumbing and sewage systems are outdated, so be sure to respect the rules, even if they seem a little embarrassing to you. You don't need to carry your passport with you while sightseeing in Guatemala. Leave it at your hotel safe and just bring photocopies so you have identification on you for emergency situations. If you do encounter a robbery or mugging, absolutely do not put up a fight or resist. It's not worth your life. They will not hesitate to kill you for your wallet or watch. And you never know if they're acting alone. They may have lookouts and backup. There are a lot of creepy crawlers in Guatemala, and the most notorious are the spiders and scorpions. Always check your belongings, clothes, and the inside of your shoes just to be on the safe side. For female travelers, wear more conservative clothing. Knee-length skirts, capris, and pants are fine. And keep your cleavage covered. If you think something might be risky, go with a male friend. Solo female travelers may be catcalled in the streets. Simply keep moving forward while maintaining a straight gaze and deny anything is occurring. Consider wearing a fake wedding ring in case a man asks you for your contact information. Female travelers say men will leave them alone once they say they're married. Definitely avoid tap water. One of the potential health concerns is waterborne illnesses. Always drink bottled water and be cautious of consuming untreated water. Be mindful not to brush your teeth with tap water, avoid ice in your drinks, and watch out for raw vegetables like lettuce, which are often washed in untreated water. In general, be careful where you eat. Many foreigners are sensitive to unfamiliar ingredients and food preparation methods, easily falling victim to food poisoning, stomach infections, and traveler's diarrhea. There are no required travel vaccinations for entry to Guatemala, but some vaccinations are advisable for travelers to protect against various diseases. Recommended vaccinations include hepatitis A and B, typhoid, tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis, and routine influenza vaccinations. The appeal of diving right into Lake Atitlán is hard for anyone to resist, but not always the best idea. Most people advise against swimming there because the water is not clean and not that safe either. There are a lot of drownings. Water hygiene can vary due to pollution and runoff. If you notice locals swimming in a certain area, it's probably okay to swim. but the risk of infection is higher for anyone with an open wound or weakened immune system. Also, take extra care not to ingest the lake's water. And if you do get the water on you, be sure to shower right away to wash off any potential contaminants and choose your swimming spots wisely. If you're going to Guatemala or anywhere to attend a retreat like Nancy did, make sure to read all the reviews. Ask around to see if you can talk to someone else who went on the same retreat. Verify any credentials. If you feel unsafe at all, leave immediately. In case of emergency, dial 1500 from anywhere in Guatemala. This will connect you to a bilingual operator who can put you in contact with police, fire department, or an ambulance. And as always, make sure that no matter where you're traveling, you inform someone about your plans. Tell someone reliable where you're going, what you'll be doing, and when to expect you back. My number one tip to staying alive on vacation is to pay attention to your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it isn't. Nancy Ng went missing during the afternoon of October 19, 2023, kayaking at Lake Atitlán while attending a yoga retreat with 11 other people. She was 29 years old, Asian American, 5 feet 8 inches tall, and 125 pounds, with brown eyes and long dark hair. It's believed she drowned, but the only witness that could provide any information has not given an official statement to authorities, refuses to speak to Nancy's family, and has only released a statement to the media through her lawyer. If you have any information about Nancy, where you were on Lake Atitlán that day, and can come forward with any information, no matter how small the detail, please email helpusfindnancy@gmail.com or send a direct message on Instagram at helpusfindnancy or a text on WhatsApp at 626-614-3218. Nancy's family deserves to know what happened, and Nancy deserves to come home. And finally, remember to leave a review and rate this podcast 5 stars if you like the show. Or hell, even if you don't. But either way, feel free to let me know what you think. Please follow The Last Trip on Instagram at The Last Trip Crime Pod and subscribe on Patreon to support the show. You'll get extra research, videos, photos, and updates, and even learn more about my personal travels. That's patreon.com/The Last Trip Podcast. I'm Jamie Beebe, bringing you your last trip and signing off until the next one. Thanks for listening.